clubbing scene in Atlanta was a very dangerous circle to be a part of. Young girls were virtually risking their lives with a client base that was mainly criminals and gangsters. And one day in 2014, Angela Rabotte would come into contact with her most terrifying client yet. So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Today we're going to be discussing the murder of Angela Rabotte. But quickly before we get into today's case, I just want to thank our sponsor for making this video possible, Karma. Karma is a free app and a Chrome extension that makes sure that you never miss a discount or a coupon code when you're online shopping. The link to download Karma will be down below in the description of this video. It has been absolutely essential to me since I started using it probably about a year ago now. I actually bought this dress using Karma. It was sold out for so long and I wanted it for so long, and so I asked Karma to let me know when it was back in stock, to like send me a notification, and they did one better. They notified me that it was back in stock and they also got me a discount on it. Karma is super quick and easy to set up. All you have to do is go to the Karma homepage and download it as an app or a Chrome plugin, and then head over to your favorite online stores and just start shopping, girl. Whenever you click on a product that you like, you can click on this little Karma button on the side of your screen to save the item, and then you can select which price drop you would like to be notified for, and you can save the item to one of your lists. And I love using Karma's lists to organize all my different stuff. Like for Christmas, I had a different list for each person I was buying presents for. It makes it so easy to keep tabs of things. But in general, I use the list feature to break up all my saved items into like books and home decor, fashion, beauty. I have a little technology tab on there with all my new computer equipment and stuff I want. You could even use it to get discounts on like your food shopping, your grocery shopping online. You can literally use Karma for anything, and once you've saved any item on there, they can notify you when it comes back in stock, just like they did with me in this dress, or when stuff goes on sale, just like me in this dress. And when you do check out, Karma scans the web for relevant coupon codes and then applies them all automatically for you at checkout. So you just get to sit there and watch yourself save money. This feature is only available on desktop, so if you want to be making the most of Karma, you really need that Chrome plugin, girl. But what's even better is that Karma even has their own version of like a cashback program. When you shop select retailers, not only will you get a little bit of cashback, but Karma will also donate some money to charity as well, which I just love it. So if you want to download Karma as an app or the Chrome extension, you can click the link down below in the description. Do it. It will honestly be the best thing you ever do if you online shop a lot like I do. Thanks again to Karma for sponsoring this video. Now, before we get into the case, I do just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this case. This video is for educational purposes, and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. Angela Rabotte was a 26-year-old woman born in 1988 in Atlanta, Georgia. She was a single mother to a 3-year-old daughter named Shay, who was her absolute world, like her best friend. Angela was described as being such a devoted mother. She was an incredible mother to Shay. She was nurturing, she was hardworking. Everything Angela did, she did it for Shay. Shay was her whole entire world. Angela was also a very great friend from what I could tell in my research. Everyone just had absolutely amazing things to say about this woman. She was happy, she was positive, she could make anyone smile. In fact, I have a quote from her mother who said, "Angie could always make you smile no matter what." Angela was a go-getter. She was a very driven woman and she had big dreams of becoming a model, and she was working on it a little bit. I mean, she had just had her daughter 3 years ago, and when you have a baby, it kind of changes your whole life, obviously. So the dream of becoming a model had become a little bit more distant than it once had been. She was doing a few modeling jobs here and there, but it really wasn't her full focus. Right now, her full focus was her daughter and providing for her daughter. The modeling jobs weren't bringing in enough money for it to even be part-time, and so Angela needed a job. So she went and got a job as an exotic dancer in one of the clubs downtown, and she went by the name Climax. And Climax, aka Angela Rabotte, had quite a solid reputation in those circles. She was good at what she did, and everyone knew it. She was very, very popular. Angela was like one of the best. The men always demanded her. They always wanted her. And sometimes this was a little bit intimidating because the kind of men that would come into Angela's club where she worked, they were scary individuals. Criminals, gangsters, drug dealers, people that own a lot of guns. Like, there were some very unsavory characters that went in that particular club. And while Angela never expected any of her clients to, like, hurt her in any way, she couldn't be too sure. And she wanted to make sure that she would be able to protect herself if anything like that ever happened. And so Angela went out and bought herself a handgun. And on March 28th, 2014, it was just another day for Angie. She was 26 years old at this point. She'd been dancing for a while. That night, she was booked to dance at a private party. I think it was like a bachelor party in an upscale hotel in Midtown Atlanta. Before she went off to work that day, Angela dropped her daughter off at her friend's house because her friend had agreed to look after Shay while Angela was at this party. However, when the next morning rolled round, Angela didn't get in contact with this friend about picking up Shay. And the friend did think this was weird because, like I said, Angela was such a devoted mother. Her whole world revolved around Shay. So it was unlikely that she'd just, like, forgotten about her daughter or something. But the friend didn't think too much of it in the way of, like, well, Angela works a night job, so maybe she was just tired. Maybe she slept in that morning and just hadn't texted about Shay yet. So the friend waited around for a little while longer, and then she tried to get in contact with Angie, but Angie didn't pick up her phone. It went straight to voicemail. She waited around a little while longer until the concern was just eating her alive, and so she got in contact with Angela's family and they decided to report her as missing. So before she'd even been missing for 24 hours at this point, Angie's family had already filed a missing persons report, the police were getting on it, and they were organising their own search party. With the help of social media, all of her friends and family were posting missing persons photos and meetups for different searches, and there was such a huge turnout for Angela's searches. It was clear that she was, you know, a very popular lady in this area. A lot of people wanted to find her and bring her back home. Hundreds of people had turned up on such short notice to try and help find this woman, but there was one person that was nowhere to be found. And that was Angela's own baby daddy. Angela's ex-boyfriend and the father of her child was called Daryl, and she'd been in an off-again, on-again relationship with him for years, I think, since like their early 20s. And they were not right for each other. Everyone said it. Both of them said it. All their families said it. They were both just very fiery, stubborn people that clashed a lot. They argued about pretty much everything. And so for that reason, they were just always splitting up and getting back together. They knew they liked each other, but they knew they couldn't make it work long term. But they kind of like trying. And that's exactly why everyone was so confused when Daryl didn't even show up to help look for Angela, because, well, I don't know, if you're close enough to her that you've been on again, off again with her for like 6 years, then why don't you want to help find her? Police just found it quite interesting that this man shares a child with this woman. This is the mother of his daughter. Even if he didn't want anything to do with her himself, why would he not want to find Angela for Shay's sake? Police hoped that they would be able to locate him and question him at some other point during the case. Right now, they had to focus on the searches, but they had a feeling that Daryl could be quite useful to the investigation. But like I said, for now, they needed to get on with the searches. But in fact, there were actually a lot of people there that turned up to the searches that police were interested in questioning. A lot of Angela's co-workers, like other dancers or men that went in her club, actually came to look for her. So police were really interested to talk to, well, all of them, the women and the men. They wanted to get both perspectives of Angela's job, Angela's line of work. All of the girls were very open with police about just how dangerous their jobs are. They were telling them all about the people that they're in regular contact with, and they were worried about Angela. They were really worried, actually. And I think that says a lot, that the girls that she worked with were this worried because they knew the kind of people that she'd been around the night before. And girls like Angie, all these dancers, are pretty much forced to work with these dangerous clients, you know, all these drug dealers, criminals, gangsters, because, well, not just for the money. Obviously, a lot of them are desperate for the money, but not even a money thing. They're forced to more out of fear. They don't want to piss off these scary individuals. So police were immediately worried that something might have happened to Angela Rabotte, either at that party or on her way home. Maybe someone that was there that night had something to do with this. They spoke with a few more of her co-workers who said that Angela just seemed like normal Angela that night, to be fair. She was working the same as she always had. She was smiley, fun, happy, bubbly, like nothing seemed off. She completed her whole shift and she left that evening in good spirits. So her friends assumed that something must have happened to her on her way home. One of the dancers actually told the police that she'd seen Angela outside the party that night at about 5 a.m. So the party had finished, all the girls were like finding their own ways home. And apparently it was like 5 a.m. and Angela is on the phone in this car park, screaming down the phone to someone, having an argument on the phone. And then she starts asking this person if they can give her a lift, if they can come and pick her up. And this woman that saw all of this going on with Angie on the phone, she actually left at this point. So she never saw how Angie completed that phone call or if she ever got that lift home. So this was very concerning. That was the last known sighting of Angela Rabotte, and from that point they have no idea what happened to her. They have no idea who she was trying to meet that night, who she was trying to get to pick her up. That was something that they were going to have to investigate over the next few days. By the evening of day one in this investigation, police had actually managed to contact Daryl, Angela's ex-boyfriend, and he told them that he'd actually only just found out that Angela was missing, like 10 minutes before that phone call. He said that he found out through social media, actually, because of all the shared posts about all these search parties and stuff like that. He said that no one had called him to let him know that the mother of his child was missing, and he had to find out through these social media posts. And that's why he wasn't at the search, because he had no idea. So it wasn't as suspicious as it once seemed, and actually as police got talking to Daryl, they realised that he actually was like a really good guy, a really good father to Shay, and he seemed genuinely really concerned about Angie. He really wanted to find her, he really wanted to make sure that she was okay. Daryl said that he couldn't eat or sleep, he felt sick ever since he found out that Angela was missing. Every day of this investigation, he felt sick trying to find her. So Daryl was, of course, questioned by the police, but he was very quickly ruled out as a suspect. It seemed that his lack of involvement in the case up until this point had just been a misunderstanding. And now that he knew that Angela was missing, he was very much involved. He was very much showing his support. So police believed him, and they felt like he wasn't suspicious. As the first day of the investigation drew to a close, police managed to question one last man, and this man claimed to be the man that Angela was shouting down the phone to in the car park after the party. His name was Charles Outlaw Jr., and he told the police that he and Angela had been friends for years and years and years, nearly a decade. They originally made friends when they were teenagers, and then in their 20s they kind of lost touch a little bit, but then literally just before Angela's disappearance, I think about a month before she went missing, Charles came back into her life and they kind of rekindled this friendship. A lot of people actually thought the two of them were romantically involved, or at least they wanted to be, but the two of them denied it. Angela denied it, Charles denied it, he said that he had a girlfriend, but like, I don't know, everyone thought it, so. But police did say that Charles seemed very, very distressed about Angela's disappearance. He really wanted to help find her. In fact, he was like one of the first people at the search party on day one. Angela's friends spoke with the police and they shared a couple of concerns that they had about Charles Outlaw Jr. Nothing too serious, but like a couple of little like, don't know what I think to that guy kind of things. He was always very interested in Angela's finances, her friends said. He would always ask her questions about money and stuff like that. And again, like I said, it's nothing too weird, but like, and he was also very interested in becoming her manager. He would like talk to her about it a lot and ask her about it a lot, and she was just kind of like, I don't want a manager right now. But yeah, he seemed very interested in Angela's money and her career and being involved in that money and career. But yeah, like I said, Charles Outlaw Jr. was the guy that Angela was shouting down the phone to come and pick her up after that party. And he did. He said he did. He said he went and got in his car and went and picked Angela up at like 5 a.m. It was all the way on the other side of the city, and so Charles wasn't happy about having to go and pick her up, but he did it anyway. When he got there and when Angela got in the car, he said that he started shouting at her because he wasn't happy that he'd had to come out at 5 a.m. to come and pick her up from the other side of town. And supposedly Sadly, Angela snapped back at him and said that she didn't need him and that there were plenty other guys in that area that would be happy to drive her around or pick her up after a party. At this point, Charles was getting pissed off and he didn't really want to be in the car with Angela anymore, but he knew that he had promised to take her home. So what he did was he pulled over into this parking lot and he told Angela that he would be back in a minute, and he just got out of the car and walked away. Coincidentally, this car park was right near his girlfriend's house, and so he got out of the car, walked to his girlfriend's house. He was there for about 15 minutes, and then he decided to walk back to the car and then drive Angela home, now that they'd had some time apart from each other. But when he arrived back at his car, Angela Rabotte and all of her belongings were gone. Charles just thought she'd found another way home. Maybe she'd got someone else to come and pick her up. He did think she'd been texting guys, loads of different guys, the whole time they'd been on this drive, so he just assumed that was what happened. Either way, he wasn't really concerned, so he just went back to his girlfriend's house and slept over for the night. And then the next morning he woke up, saw that she was missing, and joined the search party. Immediately, police were suspicious of Charles Outlaw. I mean, of course, he was the last person to see Angela alive, and now she's nowhere to be found. Oh, and they had an argument before she went missing. I mean, it's all adding up a little bit, isn't it? So police decided to get some intel on this man. They wanted to find out some dirt about him, and they actually found out, word on the street, was that Charles Outlaw was a drug dealer. And like quite a big one as well. But as soon as police heard this, they actually saw a golden opportunity. They could use this to their advantage. Right now, police believe that Charles Outlaw knew a lot more about Angela's whereabouts than he was letting on. And they knew that they were going to struggle to get that information out of him unless they could arrest him. But obviously they couldn't arrest him because they actually didn't have any evidence against him at this point in time. Unless police arrest him for a completely separate charge, a drugs charge, because he's a drug dealer. And then that way they can take him down to the police station, have him in police custody, question him as much as they want, and they don't have to find any evidence against him in the Angela Rabotte case just yet. So the next morning, day 2 of the investigation, the search parties all come and meet up again, and Charles Outlaw is there. Police pulled him to the side and asked if they could search him, and on him they found cocaine, and so they were able to arrest him for possession. Not only that, but he was also arrested for violating the terms of his probation because he had drugs, and that was against the terms, so double punishment. They took him back to the police station and they were trying to get information out of him, but this wasn't Charles Outlaw's first time in the police. Oh no, it was not. He knew how to stay quiet in these situations. He was not saying a word without a lawyer by his side. So police couldn't really get much out of him for the time being. They were gonna have to try and find some more physical evidence. By April 2nd, 2014, at this point it had been almost a week since Angela Rabotte went missing, and on this particular day, police received a phone call. A couple of surveyors had been out in a woodland in Lilburn, Atlanta, when they'd come across what seemed to be a mannequin laying under a pile of straw. But as they got closer, they realised that it wasn't a mannequin at all. It was a dead body. It was the body of 26-year-old Angela Rabotte. She had blood all in her hair, and when her body was transported for an autopsy, it was found that she'd been killed with one singular gunshot wound to the back of the head. She was shot execution style at incredibly close range. Genuinely, the gun was pretty much touching the back of her head. So that was her cause of death, this one singular gunshot wound, and surprisingly enough, she didn't seem to have any other injuries on her whole body. It seemed that Angela had been killed very quickly. She possibly didn't even know that it was about to happen since she was shot in the back of the head. She had absolutely no chance to be able to fight for her life, and so she had no self-defense wounds. Police theorized that whoever had killed Angela Rabotte had done so elsewhere, shot her somewhere else, and then carried her body into the woods. It also looked like the killer had intentionally tried to cover up Angela's body with that straw, but obviously it hadn't worked and her body was still found. Angela's family were informed of her passing within a few hours of her body being found, and now they were left to come to terms with such a huge loss. And 3-year-old Shay was now going to grow up without her mother, without her best friend. Police knew that they had to solve this case fast, not only for Angela and her grieving family, but for Shay. So police got back to work on this investigation and they were going full force. They did full searches of the crime scene, they did full autopsies of Angela's body, looking for any clues. But frustratingly, there was absolutely nothing that they could get from the woods, obviously because they believed the killer shot her elsewhere and then put her there. There wasn't going to be much evidence in this woods. But police did still have their eyes firmly on Charles Outlaw Jr. In fact, where Angela's body was found in this wooded area, that was only about 5 miles away from that car park where Charles said that he parked and left Angela. The last place that she was seen alive. Police were suspicious enough at this point to go and get a search warrant for Charles Outlaw's car, the car that he had supposedly driven Angela in on the night that she was killed. Ever since Charles gave that account that he'd left Angela in the car in that car park, that is officially the last place that she was seen alive, was his car. So this search was going to be crucial to the investigation. Police had actually got a tip-off from one of Angela's friends, actually, that had seen Charles Outlaw Jr. the day after Angela went missing, so the following morning. He had taken his car to a car wash. And he wasn't just getting any car wash, he was getting like a full inside-outside scrubbing, hoovering, borderline sanitizing. Like, this car was getting cleaned the F out. And this only got even more suspicious, as if that isn't suspicious enough, by the way, but it only got even worse when police found out that this car that he was cleaning was a rental car. And they just couldn't believe that anyone would take a rental car that they don't own, that they're going to be giving back in a few days. Why would you take a rental car and have it fully deep cleaned? Unless there was something you were trying to get rid of in there. I don't know, maybe it's just the Yorkshire in me, but I know that I wouldn't take a rental car that I'm going to be giving back in a few days. Like, I don't own it. Why would I take that car to a car wash and spend so much money getting, like, the most deep clean I could possibly get? Like, why? Who would do that? I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. Of course, unless there is something that you need to clean up in that car before you can give it back. Perhaps a bloodstain? Police wanted to find out why Charles was so desperate to clean that car before he sent it back, and so they got this search warrant and they got to work. Obviously at this point the car was so clean because he'd taken it to get it scrubbed head to toe that there really wasn't much that police were going to be able to get in the way of evidence. Like, they're not just going to find blood or like any of the typical true crime clues, I suppose. But because Angie's cause of death was from a gunshot wound, police knew that they would be able to test for gunshot residue inside that car, which is something that you can't really clean. Well, I don't actually know, I've never tried, but it's detectable for a long time after it's been there. And so police go into this car, they do all these tests, and what do you know? There is gunshot residue all over the roof of this car. A gun had been shot inside that car within the last few days. This was probably enough for police to be able to arrest and charge him then and there on the spot, but they didn't want to do it just yet. They wanted to hang about, collect a few more pieces of evidence, because they wanted to make sure that they could actually send this guy to prison. So they brought him in for another interview the next day, although they didn't make him aware that he was a suspect in this case just yet. He thought that he was more of like a witness, you know, just talking to police as Angie's friend. So anyway, he's having this interview, and then about halfway through, he asks police if he could go and call his girlfriend, and they say yes. They let him go to the phones and make this call. But this was like the biggest mistake Charles Outlaw could have made. What kind of idiot doesn't realise that police phone calls are recorded and listened to? So he was on the phone to his girlfriend telling her that he had this big story to tell her, but she was going to be really mad at him when she heard it. So she asked him why, is it something bad? And he responded saying, I mean, yeah, it is bad. And police heard this conversation and they were very much intrigued. I mean, they wanted to know what Charles was talking about, because that was all he said. He didn't say anything too incriminating. He wasn't that stupid, but still, this is suspicious enough. And once again, in this situation, police saw an opportunity to maybe squeeze some more information out of Charles, because clearly he felt comfortable opening up to his girlfriend and being honest with her and sharing his secrets with her. So they spoke with her and actually managed to get her on board with the investigation, get her to turn against her boyfriend, and she was very brave throughout all this. I can't imagine how scary it must be to actually be working with the police against your boyfriend that you believe could be a murderer. She too was suspicious of Charles at this point. She thought that her boyfriend might have killed Angela Rabotte, and so she wanted to help police in this investigation. So she agreed to go and speak with her boyfriend with a microphone, little wire thing, so that they could audio record the whole conversation, and basically she was supposed to try and get a confession out of him some way or another. So his girlfriend goes in with this audio recording equipment on, and she strikes up a conversation, tries to get some stuff out of him. But quickly she realises that this was not going to be as straightforward as they had originally hoped. Because Charles, I keep saying it, but he's not stupid. He's had a lot of run-ins with police before, and he knows how these things go. So he knew not to say anything incriminating out loud to his girlfriend, which, do you see the issue here? He was being audio recorded, so if he doesn't say anything out loud, there's no evidence. But he did tell her the story. He did sit there and tell his girlfriend the whole story about what happened with Angela Rabotte, but every time he would get to something quite incriminating, he would stop talking and instead just mouth the word and kind of act it out. So that way, when Angela took this audio recording back to the police, they listened back and they were like, we know what he's saying, but because he hasn't said it out loud, we can't use it against him. It made the audio recording virtually redundant. They couldn't use it, like, at all, but they actually didn't need to at this point because he told her the full story anyway. So this is the story that Charles Outlaw Jr. told his girlfriend when he was being audio recorded. It was kind of the same in the beginning, that Angie had texted him at 5 a.m. to come and pick her up, and he agreed to because he knew that she was a single mother with no other way of getting home. Even though it was across the other side of town, he was going to do it for Angela. So he went and picked her up, but he wasn't happy about it, and so as soon as she got in the car, this argument began. And Charles said that about halfway through this argument, Angie reaches into her bag and pulls out a handgun and points it straight at Charles. But he said that he wasn't nervous. He didn't think that Angie was serious about this. There was no way she was going to act on this threat. He thought she was all talk, and so he just grabbed this gun out of her hand, put it to the back of her head, and then in his words, it just went off. In a matter of seconds, Charles Outlaw Jr. had shot Angela Rabotte to death. Within seconds of her getting that gun out of her bag, her life was gone. Ballistic experts and pathologists that have looked at Angela Rabotte's gunshot wound in her head have said that it is virtually impossible for the gun to have just gone off at that angle and, you know, to be pressed up against her head. It didn't just go off. They very much believe that the way that Angela was shot, there was intent behind it. He meant to shoot her in the head. They also managed to confirm that the gun that killed Angela was in fact her own gun. Her gun that she had bought for protection, to save herself in situations like this. So now, even though police didn't have the audio recording of Charles admitting all of that, he still admitted it all to his girlfriend, so like, she could be a witness and tell police that he'd said all of this to her. And the reason they knew she was telling the truth was because the things that his girlfriend now knew about Angela's murder were things that weren't even printed in the media, like where the gunshot was on her head. She knew it was directly in the back of her head, whereas the media had never posted that. They just said that she was shot. It was like all these little things that she shouldn't have known unless she was told them by the killer himself. That same evening, police had a search of Charles Outlaw's home, and in the back of his closet, they found a little money bag wrapped up in a blanket. Like, it was obvious that he was trying to hide it and get it as far away in the back of his closet as he could. Turned out this little money bag actually belonged to Angela Rabotte. It was the bag that she used to take to work. When they had these private parties, she would like keep all the tips in it so that she had it on her person. She probably had it at that bachelor party on the night that she was murdered, took it in Charles Outlaw's car when he took her home, and then when he killed her, he had to get rid of it. Police also managed to recover both Angela's and Charles's phone records of the night of Angela's murder, and they found that both of them had been to Lilburn in Atlanta, where Angela's body was found, around 5:30 a.m., which is around the time that they believe Angela will have been murdered and her body disposed of. And it was out there in Lilburn where Angela's cell phone was switched off and never came back on again. Later that same morning, Charles's phone records show him coming back home alone. So finally, police felt they had enough evidence to go and arrest and charge Charles Outlaw Jr. with the murder of Angela Rabotte. The case went to trial, but before the proceedings could even fully begin, the judge ruled a mistrial. The reason for this was actually an audio recording that police were going to use against Charles Outlaw, but the judge listened to that audio recording. It wasn't the audio recording with the girlfriend, by the way. I think it was just like a normal interview audio recording. But the judge listened to it before the trial, and he said that it would be unfair to use in court because there were a few things that Charles said at different points throughout this audio recording that could negatively impact how the jury sees his character, if that makes sense. Like, it was all stuff that was unrelated to the case, but it did make him look like a bad guy, which, like, that's a whole other issue in itself. Right now, they just needed this murder trial to be as unbiased and uninfluenced by other irrelevant things as they could possibly make it. It's not fair to really bring in other things that someone's done in the past or things that someone might have said that are completely unrelated to the matter at hand that then might impact how they fare in that trial. It's just not fair, even if the person is a murderer, you know? And so for that reason, the trial was kind of rebooked for the next week and they got a whole new jury and now it was about to begin for reals. One of the first things the prosecution did was bring out Charles's ex-girlfriend to give evidence against him because, I mean, she had a lot, to be honest. She had the whole conversation that Charles had with her where he was like acting things out. Apparently he like put his hand up to his head like a gun and then put it around the back to show where he'd shot Angela, because obviously he couldn't say that out loud with the audio recording and stuff, but he was like acting all this out to his girlfriend. His girlfriend also told the court that on the night of Angela's murder, Charles Outlaw came home and mentioned something to the girlfriend's younger brother about how, I think I killed the old girl. Don't know what that means. And it was very much out of context in my research, so don't know. I think it's implied that he was referencing Angela, but I don't know what the conversation was. I don't know. There was actually another witness that was brought up as well. Charles's cellmate that he was sharing a room with in prison. Sharing a cell, it's not a room. And this guy stood there and told the whole court that Charles had confessed to him the whole story from start to finish about how he murdered Angela Rabotte. He told this guy that he'd murdered her in the middle of an argument, he shot her in the back of the head, and then he put her body in the boot of his car, drove her out to a wooded area, and disposed of her body. He even mentioned to this inmate that the next morning he actually had to go and get his car deep cleaned, and he seemed really pissed off about it. After hearing all of this evidence against him, it's no surprise that the jury came back and found Charles Outlaw Jr. guilty of the murder of Angela Rabotte. For that, he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, plus an extra 15 years for a bunch of other charges, because there were obviously like hiding the body and firearms charges, all these kind of things. He had a lot of different charges. So he is going to be in prison for the rest of his life. Actually, he tried to appeal it just last year in 2021. It was unsuccessful. He is, in fact, going to be in prison for the rest of his life. But that is all I have for this case. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks again to Karma for sponsoring this video. Remember, the link to download Karma is down below in the description of this video. Go do it and start saving some money on your online shopping now, girl. A huge thank you to all of my channel members for supporting me and helping decide the cases that I cover, especially my tier 2 members whose names are all on screen right now. If you want to become a channel member, you can click the link to do so in the description, or you can click the join button if you're on a desktop. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you'll also enjoy this one. I'm gonna pick you one out special that's kind of like this one. Or if you want to see some more from me, you can subscribe. I post true crime content like this all the time. But yeah, thanks for coming. Bye!